Ruth Lyons, a pioneer in radio and television broadcasting in Cincinnati. Her iconic program, the 50/50 Club, now her legacy is living on in the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund.
Kids and families come back after a number of years and say, I still have that craft project we made when I was 10 years old.
On this episode of Let's Talk Cincy, we sit down with the people who knew Ruth Lyons best.
She knew what the rest of us were just learning. And she specifically, when she was on the air, she had a gift.
Those who discovered and fell in love with her years later, and show you how the fund she created is providing healing and comfort 80 years later.
From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy.
Before there was Oprah or Ellen, there was Ruth Lyons right here in Cincinnati. And she not only wanted to make a difference with her show, but the community who watched it. Welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. I'm Alexis Rogers.
And I'm Curtis Fuller. We are coming to you from a mock-up of the set of her iconic show, the 50/50 Club. Today we're looking at the rise to fame of Ruth Lyons and how her legacy will never be forgotten.
You know that we're finally here at the show, and so we wave you a great big hello. Hello!
She was known as the First Lady of Television, affectionately called Mother.
Stand by. Cue orchestra.
WLW Radio and WLW Color Television present Ruth Lyons and the fabulous 50/50 Club. And now, here is the star of the 50/50 Club show, in person, Ruth Lyons.
Ruth Lyons was more than an entertainer. Her story is legendary. The first woman to host a national daytime talk show. It's been said that Ruth Lyons was so popular, tickets to her show were sent out 3 years in advance. Folks came from all over to see her, and the 50/50 Club, the highest rated daytime show in the nation. And what an experience.
Let us entertain you.
The biggest stars in the country like Bob Hope came to Cincinnati to visit the Ruth Lyons show.
You tricks, some old and then some new tricks.
Today, Ruth Lyons' legacy lives on through a charity she started 80 years ago. In 1939, after visiting Cincinnati Children's Hospital during the Christmas season, she learned that there were no funds available to brighten the holidays for the hospitalized children. She asked her radio listeners at the time to send in their nickels and dimes for the children. That first year, she raised $1,000, and that was the beginning of the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund, now helping children in Cincinnati and Dayton area hospitals. Since its inception, the fund has raised over $22 million. In addition to Christmas celebrations, it provides a variety of unique services. Every child receives a gift of their very own to keep when they experience an overnight stay at the hospital.
And I don't think there's a fund in the country that can say that. All in all, it is just mushrooms, you know, from a very small endeavor to something that we just can't afford not to do.
In 1967, overwhelmed by grief following the death of her 21-year-old daughter, Candy Newman, and battling her own health challenges, Ruth Lyons stepped away from television.
Let us entertain you. Let me make you smile.
Ruth Lyons passed away in November 1988. She was 81 years old, but her legacy will last forever.
And if you're real good, I'll make you feel good. I want your spirits to climb.
Well, some of the clips you saw in that piece were from the documentary, Ruth Lyons, First Lady of Television.
It's full of rare footage of Ruth Lyons, as well as comments from associates and many of her admirers, and boy, did she have many. We're joined by the producers of that documentary, David Ashbrook and Mark Magistrelli. You all, thank you so much for coming. It's amazing to see all of what you all were able to put together. I mean, I know it must have took some time. How long did it take you all?
It took us 3 years to get it all completed. We came up with this idea and said, well, let's do it, despite the few elements we had to work with, but we said we have to get all these key interviews, and we waited quite some time to get some of those folks to agree. That wasn't the only reason it took a long time. It was a major production and a labor of love.
Yeah. Ruth Lyons has been gone now for 31 years. That seems hard to believe. And has been off the air for over 50 years. I mean, it's amazing that that her legacy continues and is here in Cincinnati and really throughout the nation for folks who got a chance to see her.
Well, the remarkable thing I think we discovered in asking for interviews were that so many of the people that she'd brought onto the program, people like Johnny Mathis, Phyllis Diller, Carol Channing, they were only too happy, to take part in it. And then you had the people who were influenced by her, David Letterman, as a little boy watching it with his mother in Indianapolis on WW's station out there. So really, it was not difficult to get these people to say, I want to be part of this. Sometimes getting through, the various gatekeepers can be difficult, but once you actually got to speak with them, not only were they happy to do it, I think in general, they were just marvelous, wonderful people to get to know.
She definitely had a magic about her, right? And especially for that time, I know when I look at her, even now, I'm so inspired, especially as a woman, what she was able to do. Talk to us a little bit about the impact and the oomph that she really had.
Her audience was, because it was on in 4 cities, not just Cincinnati, but in Dayton and Columbus and Indianapolis, she really accumulated about 7 million viewers every day, which was the same number of viewers that Oprah would get. And people listened to her. She was on at noon. She called them her ladies, referring to her audience. There was one advertiser who wanted to move off of that time period. She said, no, we have to be on at noon because that's when my audience can watch me. You talked about ticket sales. You talked about it took 3 years to get tickets. She'd do remotes. The show couldn't have been any more popular than it was.
I love that. And you know what? Ruth Lyons realized that while Cincinnati was celebrating the holidays inside the hospital, there were no decorations, no parties, not even a Christmas tree.
We have a look at how Ruth Lyons made sure there is a touch of Christmas and gift giving every day at one area hospital, coming up on Let's Talk Cincy. Ruth Lyons had a zest for the tradition of the holidays. We're looking at the legacy the Ruth Lyons Fund is leaving in Greater Cincinnati.
And Dayton Children's Hospital was among the first to put Ruth Lyons Children Fund to use.
Here, the sound of joy means much more than most realize.
We were doing good on my IB, and Jamie gave this to me.
At Dayton Children's Hospitals, families like the Fields have to get used to a new norm.
He'd be at school and I'd be at home or at my work, so.
Their journey began unexpectedly.
It was just in a 72-hour period of time of just getting him here, figuring out what was wrong with him, because he was delusional way before we even knew what was really wrong with him. And there, I locked it, so don't move.
A long time ago, we were in the hospital for 25 days and 3 weeks. It's sad. Family's sad. I'm going to be on the moon.
He had an infection in his ankle, I guess, already, or somewhere throughout his body. And once the break did it, that's kind of infused everything. And then we ended up pretty much staying in the hospital. They took testing. They did a spinal tap on him. Afterwards, then they come back and said, it was MRSA.
Toys and activities became a medicine for Austin.
But they have been so wonderful with the toys and activities and keeping him actually occupied and keeping him busy, because that's all he wants.
Dayton Children's Hospital gives at least 1,000 of these items to kids and their families a month.
Our Ruth Lyons funds we use to purchase toys for our play areas and activity centers. We also use it to purchase some gifts for patients on Christmas Day. One of the big things we use it for is admission gifts for our kids that are admitted to the hospital and in surgery. So we have coloring books, crayons, we have these grab-and-go play packs, we have decks of cards. For me, since I've been here a long time, is seeing kids and families come back after a number of years and say, I still have that craft project we made when I was 10 years old in the activity center, or that gift that we got. It's amazing that over the years, how many people have said that.
Proving that Ruth Lyons has an impact that has withstood the decades.
What she's done so far is like amazing. Like it is, it's awesome. I mean, he's come a long way. He loves toys, but yeah, toys are a great thing for kids. I mean, just to kind of get their minds off of everything.
Thank you for the toys.
Oh man, there's so many awesome kiddos that are so thankful, and Dayton Children's Hospital says that the gifts have become such a big part of their operation, they really don't know how they would do what they do and provide for families without the help of Ruth Lyons.
She was a gifted broadcaster, and I was very lucky to be in her presence.
Next on Let's Talk Cincy, we sit down for a one-on-one interview with broadcasting legend Nick Clooney.
He tells us what made Ruth Lyons so special. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Let's Talk Cincy. WLWT viewers have gotten to know Ruth Lyons through her acts of generosity and the children's fund created in her name.
But there are some folks who got to watch that magic she created on air. I know I got a chance to sit down with journalist Nick Clooney for a one-on-one interview about the impact Ruth Lyons made on him. If you had to describe Ruth Lyons to someone else, how would you do it?
The first thing I would describe her as is and this would be because of my own respect for her and background. I first met her when my sisters, Rosemary and Betty, were teenagers, and I was like 12 or less. And they were working at WLW radio, you know, and Ruth had already started at WLW, and she was doing the morning matinee. She was the most gifted broadcaster in my memory, and my memory now lasts 80 years and more, you know. She was very professional. She knew this business from the ground up. She knew everything about it. She knew how to deal with it. She knew the changes that were going to have to come. She knew how important color television was going to be to television. This city was far ahead of it. That was her drive. She knew what the rest of us were just learning. She was a gifted broadcaster, and I was very lucky to be in her presence.
And everybody has trouble, you know. Everybody has problems. And of course, that's the hard part, to keep on going. But you have to try, and I'm going to try real hard. I don't know whether I'll make it every day, Bobby. I'll let you and Peter get on here someday and carry on, or you and Nick or something.
Okay.
But I'll come as often as I can. Is that all right with you?
That's wonderful.
Good. Thank you.
We didn't know it at the time, but I was her assistant on her very last telecast, Wednesday, the 25th of January, 1967.
You understand what it means to be number one.
Yes.
In Cincinnati and be known around the country. But describe that in Ruth Lyons' perspective. I mean, it was unbelievable.
None of us ever have matched that specific stretch of time in which she was broadcasting live, 90 minutes in the middle of the day in 4 cities. And she did this when she did her commercials, which were all her. She did, and she never went over. When I was ad-libbing a commercial in my early days, I'd go over because I would think, oh, I better talk some more, you know, because they're paying for this. She didn't. She talked in, as I say in paragraphs, she talked 1 minute, dead on.
From everything I've read, every person I've talked to who knew her like you said she was the real deal.
Yeah, she actually was, and was not at all, there was nothing, how should I put this, no shrinking violet about her at all. She was always well-mannered, well-spoken, but solid as a rock and strong as Gibraltar.
What about the Children's Fund? We still do this. I was telling you, here it is, 80 years now.
Here she was, just for children. I was one of the kids. I was at 11 years old. I had got a tonsillectomy at Children's Hospital, and there was a toy, a wind-up toy, and it was from the Christmas fund. She built a dynasty that I think, because of the differences in technology now, it will never be seen quite the same way again. And she turned her future into something very special for women everywhere. She was amazing.
Nick Clooney's pretty amazing too, you know.
Yes, he is.
He mentioned he received a toy, and you know, since its inception, the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund has raised over $22 million.
What makes Ruth Lyons Children's Fund so special are the many efforts of sincere good deeds that continue to impact families. At Good Samaritan Hospital, their efforts serve as a cloak of healing. Families here at Good Samaritan Hospital are changing every day.
Hi, my little guy. It feels amazing. He's just so cute. I can't stop looking at him. And
especially here in the NICU.
every hour to hour is kind of different. You just have to stay on your toes and adjust how you think. And I'm so lucky that he's doing so well, and he's breathing well, he's eating, he's trying his best, little guy.
Connie Toops has been helping mothers like Gita for more than 40 years.
It's not the end of your happy story. It's, you imagine when you're having a child that everything's going to go well, and all of a sudden you end up in a NICU environment.
Providing comfort became personal.
I had a granddaughter that was in here, and as a family person, you're fearful. You're afraid for what's going to happen with that child, even if the child is doing well.
Helping families hold it together.
One of the girls was into quilting, and so she asked if we could start a quilt committee.
Nearly 20 years ago, volunteers began mending lives, stitch by stitch.
We use them to cover up the isolettes like this one here. We also used it for comfort, and they get to take them home. So it was also a gift to the family to make something homey, give them warmth.
All right, so you all have been doing this for how many years?
Since 2000.
Wow, and how many quilts do you normally give out per year?
Around 800.
Wow, so that's more than 15,000. So each one looks a little different.
Each one looks a little different. This is the one that we're currently working on. It's called the Wonky Stars.
Good Sam uses the money donated by Ruth Lyons to fund the quilts. Toops says Ruth Lyons' efforts is something she remembers as a girl.
I remember when her daughter was on the show and when her daughter died, and that everyone was so sad. And the whole story went on though, and they continued even after that, and Ruth held it together. And she was a wonderful lady, and her legacy is so awesome.
From helping with the baby's development.
Having a baby that just comes preterm, it was so unexpected, and suddenly everything we had learned before kind of goes out the window, and you have to learn how to take care of a preemie baby, and every day is so different.
To providing guidance, warmth, and love, each quilt becomes a part of each family's story.
It's the wraparound that does hold it together. It is, it's that warmth, that comfort, and that's what we hope to provide with it.
For new moms like Gita, it's loving details like this one that helps weave together their journey of healing.
He'll definitely use it in his crib for when he's little, and I was thinking of framing it or something like that and putting it over the crib in his room so he'll always have that.
Each one of those quilts takes so much work, and the hospital volunteers hold quilting days where they actually finish hundreds of quilts and then pick a new design each time. And when we come back, we're having a lot of fun raising money for the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund.
The special Kings Island Winterfest offer when Let's Talk Cincy returns.
Hi there, and welcome back to Let's Talk Cincy. We know you want to help raise money for the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund.
And we have a special way for you to do just that.
When Winterfest opens to the public, we're proud to be able to make the opportunity available for guests to donate to the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund when they purchase tickets online at visitkingsisland.com.
So what a nice offer, huh? Again, go to visitkingsisland.com to take advantage of this very special offer.
And of course, as we continue our special show on Ruth Lyons, joining us now is WLWT President and General Manager Brandon Franz. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So talk about what the legacy of Ruth Lyons means to Cincinnati first and then WLWT.
I think the most important thing with the legacy is really rooted in how she started this and where it's come from and how we've been a very small part of continuing that legacy, and quite frankly want to continue to elevate that in a big way. I mean, we've been, the foundation, the fund's been around for 80 years, and WLWT has been a part of that for a little over 70 of those 80. And darn near as long as we've been in existence as a television station for 71 and a half years. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that we inspire the next generation of people in this community to understand the impact that she had on this community, the children's lives, whom we touch every single day through these donations, and making sure that the next generation keeps this going for the next 80 years. And if there's anything that we can do as a station to continue to honor her, I think it's that, which is, you know, one of the reasons that we're here today, to talk about the importance of this. The fact is, 100% of every dollar that we raise goes back to this community, to local hospitals all over Cincinnati. And in a day and age when you talk about how much is going where and how big a board is and how big a board is not, we're very proud of the fact that every dollar that we bring in through the great partners that we've aligned ourselves with, like Kings Island that you just mentioned, to the average donor who will send in literally a $2 bill.
Dedication.
It really is.
We don't see that.
We have people that on an annual cycle will send in thousands of dollars, and we have people, like I said, that send in $1 or $5. So anything that people can afford, we will absolutely take and welcome and are very appreciative for. So I think the most important thing is making sure that we continue to elevate the message, create the narrative, and inspire the next generation of people.
Let's put up the address if you want to give to the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund. It's a familiar address.
You can send your donations to P.O. Box 59, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45201. And of course, thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition of Let's Talk Cincy.
And thank you, Brandon. Well, that does it for this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Thanks for joining us. Have a nice day.